What's going on, everybody? It's your boy jimmyjames 59, and well, we have part 3 of my what change would I make to each civilization in the game video. And we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get jumped into this bad boy fast. Before I do, I just say that if you like this series, right, let me know, right? Leave a comment down there. Especially if you agree or disagree about any particular changes, or if you have some ideas that you would have in mind. And if you like this video, right, give it that like. And if you want to follow the channel, I know I would appreciate it. Obviously, for me, taking these videos takes time. And you want to know something? Following a channel on YouTube, subscribing to it is free. Just a click of a button. I'd appreciate it, because we are out here in this fight to keep Age of Empires 2 DE alive, and watching this game go by the wayside is one change I would not like to see in the universe. So, with that being said, right, I'm gonna deactivate sellout mode, and let's get into the changes with the civilizations I'd like to see. We're gonna start with the classic, the Huns. So, the Huns have been a civilization that have been tweaked a few times, and very recently their Imperial Age technology atheism, which had been basically useless for competitive play, got a bonus that would allow the Huns to reduce 50% of their opponent's relic gold. Now, I really like this idea, kind of fits with the atheism theme, but the problem for me with this tech is that it just doesn't spice the game up. So here's what I suggest. Atheism gets changed to where it gives the Huns 50% of their opponent's relic gold. What I like about this is it creates a trade-off for your opponent. They might jettison their relics to make sure that you don't get that gold, right? And so now you're denying them their entire relic income, which would be very strong. On the other hand, if they have a gold-heavy composition they want to go for, and they think that their gold-heavy late-game composition is better than what the Huns could do with that gold, they might just keep the relics in there and suck it up. I think this bonus would create a really interesting dynamic. It would be very unique, and it would also reflect that historical sense of the Huns as a sort of plundering, marauding civilization. And hey, who wouldn't love to be a marauder? Alright, so with the Incas, a little bit of history with this civ is in order. The Incas used to be a crazy tower-rushing civilization doing something that was called the Noboru Rush, named after the player who innovated it. And it was always a wild experience to have it happen to you. And the only problem with it was that it just really wasn't what the devs intended. I think it was it could be a little overbearing for a lot of players to deal with, and basically the developers got rid of it because they changed the Incas' blacksmith upgrades affecting villagers to start in Castle Age. Now, I'd like to see the Incas get a little bit of that tower rushing ability back. They still have a decent tower rush with some towers that are cheaper on the stone cost, but I think we could do a little bit more to help them get back to that identity. Here's my idea. Their team bonus, which right now was recently changed to skirmishers and spearmen getting extra line of sight, which is okay but not that impactful. I'd like to see researching fletching at the blacksmith increase villagers' damage when they're in the tower's garrison, right? The idea would be that giving the villagers fletching might enable an extra arrow to be shot from the tower and help Incan towers win tower wars, right, in feudal age. Buffing their tower rush, making them a little bit better at that. I think that would fit with the blacksmith technologies affecting the civ, the villagers bonus, and also help get them back to that tower rushing identity. Okay, so the Italians I think are a really interesting civilization, and you know, they're a civilization I think that's a kind of a mid-tier flank civ in team games, if you can make it into the late game. Now, the Italians have an Imperial Age technology that decreases the cost of their trade carts, what I'd like to do is I'd like to see this expanded to include your allies, right? In the same way that the Berbers have a technology that increases the speed of yours and your allies' castles, but the Italians help out the trade. There have been a number of team bonuses or other bonuses in general in the more recent civilizations that are affecting allies, and the Italians, I think, are situated to be a team game civ, right? Their team bonus is the condottiero can get shared among allies, so fitting that team game identity for the civ, right? Let them and their allies make some cheaper trade carts. I think you'd see the Italians actually get picked a lot more in team games, and I think anything we can do to add variety to maps and game settings that tend to cluster with a few civs at the top, I'd like to see that. Okay, speaking of maps that tend to get a cluster of civs at the top, right? I'm going to talk about the Japanese, and their team bonus is that the galley line has +2 line of sight. Now, I think that bonus was handed down before fire galleys were introduced into the game and really became the meta for water openings. Water maps are famous for, I think, having only a few civilizations at the top, and Japanese are one of those civs, I think, that are right on the threshold, right? I highly encourage you to check out my best naval civilizations tier list video. I'll put that link at the end of this one. I'd like to see the Japanese team bonus be expanded to include all warships, right? I think that would give you and your allies fire galleys a bit of an advantage in terms of hunting other fishing ships, taking fights. I don't think it would be very overpowered. I think it would just give you that vision and help you make better decisions, and that'd be pretty cool to see in the game. Alright, the Khmer. Khmer are one of the more unique civilizations in the game, and I think that they're in a pretty good spot, and I also think it's kind of tough to make changes to the civ in some ways, because they're a civ to me that have an identity where, like, they have a really strong economy, specifically their farming, some really crazy uptimes, but their military units are not necessarily the best, so I think you got to be careful how you buff them, how you change them. Now, I kind of went back into history, and I think that the developers are pretty cognizant about history these days, and the Khmer Empire was really famous for its peasant armies. So here's what I like to see. Their Castle Age technology currently gives +3 damage to elephants. Now, to me, that's fine, but I think that the identity of Khmer elephants are that they're fast, not necessarily that they have great DPS, and so the swiftness of the elephants are baked into the unit. I'd like to see the Castle Age technology changed to allow the spear line and skirmisher line to train faster. I think that that would capture the idea of having a peasant army, and since your gold units are not necessarily great, right? You get fully upgraded cavaliers, you get Arbalest without thumb ring. The idea of being able to crank out some of the gold less units or the trash units, I think it could give them a really interesting play in the late game when they're trying to counter other civilizations. Alright, Koreans. So, the Koreans' current team bonus is that it reduces the minimum range of mangonels. I think that that's kind of meh, because if you have units surrounding your mangonels already, I think they're reducing the minimum range. They're already pretty much in danger. So here's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the team bonus change to allow trebuchets to pack and unpack 25% faster. Basically, this would be like a budget version of the Japanese's Imperial Tech Cataparuto, and that would be, I think, something that would kind of fit the region and also reflect the fact that Koreans are strong siege civilizations. I think it would be really helpful for your allies. You can actually imagine if you stacked on this bonus, if you did have Japanese on the other flank, you would have some seriously fast packing and unpacking trebs with the Japanese. So you could stack some things on this that'd be really interesting. I just think you see trebuchets in pretty much every late game, so this would be really helpful for your team. And even as Koreans on the flank, if you're going for bombard cannons, hey, you'd still be helping your allies. Probably your pocket at least would be going for trebuchets. All right, the Lithuanians. Lithuanians, I think, are a civilization that's really cool, very flexible. I think the one major change that I would make to it is I think that the leitis is too cheap. The leitis is a unit that trades very cost effectively on gold. I think I saw Spirit of the Law do a video about that, and I'd like to see its cost adjusted so that maybe it's a little bit more difficult to spam. I'm not saying it's an overpowered unit performance-wise, right? You only have the one base pierce armor, so you could be quite weak to arbalist, but Lithuanians have, probably top 3 or top 4 skirmishers in the game, so as long as you have those bad boys next to you, you shouldn't have to worry about archers too much. And I'd like to see the leitis. Let's change the cost to something like 60 food, 60 gold, right? So we're going to decrease the food cost a little bit, up the gold cost some. This will give it the same cost as the Tarkin, another decent, unique unit that's in the game, that being the Huns. I think that would just make it trade a little less cost effectively. You'd still have a place for it because of its high damage output and the fact that the relic bonus affects it. And so this would be an interesting change, and I think it would be beneficial to kind of balance the unit in a few words. Okay, right, the Magyars, a fan favorite civilization, also a very polarizing civilization. I really like the Magyars. They're actually one of my favorite civilizations to play, but let me tell you something I hate about playing them. I hate having to research Corvinian Army to take the measly 10 gold cost off of my Magyar hussars. 10 gold is small to begin with, but it's enough because the Magyar hussar is a unit that you spam, and so that really does add up over time. I honestly just think it's kind of annoying. Now, I would like to see this unit just be a straight up trash unit and not need any text to take the gold cost off. And if you're saying, well, look, this, you need to take the two-handed swordsman gold cost off with the Malay, right? Or to take the gold cost off of the Persian crossbows with the commander in technology. There's a theme here. The difference, though, is that you can only make the Magyar hussar at castles, and both of those other units, you can make them just standard production buildings. So I don't think that the comparison is fair, because castles are very expensive to get up anyways, and so to have to go and research this tech, I just find kind of pointless. So, what would I change it to? Well, the thing about the Magyars is that you have a really nice early game, and you have a fantastic late game. But the trouble is trying to get there. Now, some people clamor for the Magyars to get an economic bonus. I actually think that they're really perfect without one. What I would like to see is a way just to set up their late game so that you don't have an economic bonus that helps you get there, but you're just in a position to set up your late game army and your production earlier. So what I'd like to see is that castle age technology allow military production buildings, right? Maybe even including castles to be built faster, right? We can figure out what the number is, and Magyars do, I believe, get treadmill crane, so you have to think about that in terms of just how much faster you'd want it to be, since you can stack treadmill crane on that. But the Magyar sort of historical identity is as like a steppe nomadic civ that basically settles into Europe, and it's a military powerhouse, right? So this bonus would kind of reflect the fact that they, build their military powerhouse very well. This would mean that by the time you would get to your Imperial Age and you're getting your upgrades in, you would have your production buildings down, and if you needed to make more, you'd be able to do it pretty quickly. I think this could be a very strong bonus, and again, I'm not necessarily trying to buff the Magyar late game even more because it's already incredible, but again, the problem with Magyars is getting there, and I think that this would help Magyars get there, and so we might see them in competitive play a bit more. Alright, last is the Malay, And this might be a little controversial, but I'd like to see them have the second cavalry armor upgrade. And I know that they're the only civ that doesn't have it, and maybe some people consider that part of their identity, but I don't. I consider them more as a slow, lumbering military civilization with, things like elephants or relying on infantry and foot archers. So what I would do is I would ditch the second cav archer upgrade. I'd have them lose husbandry though, right, to compensate for it, because Malay elephants are so cheap, right, you need there to be a disincentive there, and if they lack husbandry, then they're going to just be really, really slow, and that means that they're going to be more easily converted by monks. And if you think that having the second cav armor upgrade on really cheap elephants is maybe too strong, remember the fact that, hey, if you convert it as another civilization, now you have a much stronger elephant. So you always got to be careful with elephants, and they would still die pretty hard to halbs and pikemen because they would only be getting one more melee armor. So all your counters are still going to work. I just think it would give the civ a little bit of a cavalry option late, if that's a unit that you need to go for. And so oftentimes when I think of open maps, even really bad light cavalry, it has some utility. I mean, sometimes Vikings make light cav, civs like Ethiopians maybe make hussars in late game. With Malay having light cavalry without the last armor upgrade, without bloodlines, and missing husbandry, trust me, your light cavalry are still going to suck with this civ, and they're going to need to, right, because that's part of the civ's identity, but at least they would be able to take a little bit more shots, and hey, maybe they'd have a little bit of utility in Castle Age for those rare situations when you would want to make Malay cavalry. And alright, that is it for part 3 of my changes video. I want to have part 4 coming at you sometime soon, so if you want to get notified about that video, right, remember, subscribe, follow the channel, do all that. And with all that being said, I'm jimmyjames59, and I'll see you guys out there on the ladder. Peace.